You know what I think? I think that we're all in our private traps, clamped in them, and none of us can ever get out. We scratch and claw, but only at the air, only at each other. And for all of it, we never budge an inch.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Tiana.
And this is Next Door Villain,
A podcast where we uncover the villains to discover their humanity. Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode about the Norman Bates.
Yes, Norman Bates from the famous, perhaps most famous Alfred Hitchcock film, Psycho.
//
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of my favorite films. So I'm really excited to talk about Norman Bates. And I think he's just a really, really interesting character for a lot of different reasons that we'll dive into here in a minute.
Mm-hmm. And I also just want to say this, we don't usually say this because it's kind of unspoken and expected that you know. There are some pretty interesting twists in Psycho. And every episode that we do about a villain, it has spoilers. So if you haven't seen Psycho yet, I highly recommend that you watch it before you listen to this. And yeah, you can rent it cheap, online or something. Because we're gonna say some twists, and we don't want to ruin your Psycho experience.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
More than any other villain we've ever done, there is a crazy twist in this film. And if you don't know it, you should get to experience it firsthand. Don't let us ruin it for you.
Yes.
Now, if you have seen it, we're going to go ahead and ruin it again here in a minute with our 30-second summary challenge. Every episode, we compete to see who can do a better 30-second summary. You can go onto our Twitter page for the week after the episode is released and vote on who did a better job. It's just for fun, but we do keep score and rub it in each other's faces.
Yeah.
And that Twitter account is at NextDoorVillain. There's also a lot of fun stuff on there.
Yes, I run it, obviously.
Well, obviously.
Yeah. No. I'm more skilled in the Twitter sphere. Not in the Facebook sphere, though.
Tiana's the more creative, expressive one of us, and I'm more logical and non-expressive.
Right. But we make a good team, and sometimes we surprise ourselves as well.
Yeah. So who's going first?
You. Duh.
Oh, okay.
Because last episode I went first, so...
Yeah.
Oh, that's me being logical. Oh, better watch out. All right, I'll tell you to go.
Okay.
Also, it's a good thing that we're not, on a video. We're not YouTube people, because I literally, I feel like I keep, touching my nose and, picking it. I don't know. And I'm really glad people can't see me. Anywho, I digress. All right, ready, Joe? 3, 2, 1, go!
Okay, Norman Bates is a man who runs this hotel. He runs the Bates Motel. And he seems like a really nice, kind of interesting guy, maybe a little bit creepy. It turns out that he has this weird thing with his mother where he thinks his mother is alive, or he pretends like she is, and he goes into these episodes where he dresses up as her and goes out and murders anyone that Norman is attracted to.
Beep, beep, beep. Solid. I think that's solid.
Yeah. Definitely did not give much of the movie plot away, but
That's okay.
a decent summary of Norman as a person.
All right. I'll attempt to fill in the gap. We'll see.
Great.
All right.
Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So there's this lady, right? And she's like, I'm going to run away with a bunch of money. And she's like, yeah. But then she is like, oh, I'm just going to sleep at this hotel. And she runs into Norman. And Norman's a kind of a weird guy. Very kind of nice. He comes nice. He gives her some meals. Or he gives her a meal, right? I forgot what they ate. But then later she's taking a shower. Then she dies. And the audience thinks it's her. It's the mom. It's the bad mom of the guy who runs the hotel. But it's not. It's actually Norman dressed as his mom. Okay.
Nice. Okay. You got some of the plot. I got more of the character. Good combo.
Yeah. Y'all might as
Hopefully.
well just vote for both. Well, you can.
Yeah.
But
You can vote for one of us, and then you can get your friend to follow us on Twitter and vote for the other one.
Yes.
Perfect. So, Norman is a very interesting character, and I think we need to talk a little bit more about the plot of the movie in order to discuss him. Specifically, so the character in the movie that starts out as who we would assume is the protagonist is this lady, Marion Crane, who, as you mentioned, steals a bunch of money, runs away, and ends up at this hotel. And then about a third of the way into the movie, she is murdered. And then we no longer really have a protagonist, and it's unclear who the protagonist is. But we start following Norman Bates' character a little bit more from that point on. And the movie presents it as if his mom murdered Marion and murders other people in the film. And it's not revealed until the end that Norman is his mom. He dresses up as her. He goes into these episodes where he believes that he is her. And kills other people. So up until that point, we know that Norman's kind of a weird guy and cleaning up after his mom's murders, but we find out that it's actually him creating those murders. So the question I have is, because he's clearly suffering from some kind of mental disorder, I don't want to try to put a name to it, can we really call him a villain?
Right. Because even kind of at the end of the film, a psychologist or someone is like, that is not him. That is his mother. He is his mother and himself, but his mother takes over, and it's kind of put in a very different perspective where Norman Bates becomes a victim to his brain. And it's definitely something that people who probably work in the legal field have to think about. Judges, lawyers, they take certain angles with this stuff, like, he did not control this when he murdered, and they'll take that stance, to even try and, minimize a punishment, right? And even just thinking philosophically about it, too. Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment talks about this question that's kind of similar to this, about someone who was driven to murder. This person clearly had other things going on.
Yeah, it puts us in a really tough place when trying to empathize with him, because on the one hand, he clearly is the villain because he is murdering people.
Right, and lives are lost.
Yeah, that's bad. That's like objectively bad. And we like to make someone responsible for these objectively bad things. And it feels kind of unfair to put that all on Norman if he truly is suffering from something that's causing him to do things that are out of his control. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that.
Right.
It would be interesting to have this conversation with a psychologist. But on the other hand, part of what our podcast is really about is that you don't have to be a psychologist or a PhD to understand and empathize with others. It's maybe not so important that we are able to label what's specifically wrong with him and fully understand it. But it's important that we are able to imagine and to understand that there is more going on in his life than simply some guy who's trying to murder people. And that gives us kind of an in to try to be able to empathize with him, even if we ultimately disagree with the consequences of those actions. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely. And, our point is to empathize, right? And on one hand, if I were a family member of someone who got murdered, I would be like, justice needs to happen. Someone needs to be punished. This guy, blah, 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 but then you can turn that around and be like, what if that were me? What if I were Norman Bates or like him, and something in my brain, in my mind, something that I could not control was making me do horrible, horrible things? And on one hand, would I feel so remorseful that I would want to go to jail? Or on the other hand, would I be like, but I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean it. I didn't want to do it. It just happened. And I don't know. It's so complicated.
Though there's that complicated side of it. But maybe the less complicated side, if you're thinking about him as a villain, is that when he is conscious as Norman, he's not seeking help. He's cleaning up after these murders and trying to cover up for them. And, really maybe the right thing to do is probably for him to go seek help.
Well, think about what seeking help means in 1960.
Yeah.
That means you better be packed into an asylum for the rest of your days with electric shock therapy.
That is really unfortunate.
Yeah, really shitty.
Norman he does really have this just kind of likable quality about him. And I think Alfred Hitchcock intended us to be in this very difficult position. I think he wanted us to kind of like Norman, even though he was a little odd, and to kind of be rooting for him. And there's a little bit of me that didn't want him to be caught and felt bad for him the first time I watched it, that he had to clean up after his mother's terrible mistakes and that she had him under her control, until I found out that she didn't, that they were one and the same person. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's really tough. So I guess where I end up with it is that I understand that his situation is very complex, and I think he should be held accountable for the bad things that he does. Maybe jail isn't necessarily the right place for him. He probably needs some kind of place where he can be helped and made into a better person, and then maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's obvious he should most likely be away from society because he's still causing harm, you know, like the next person who checks into that hotel, better get him away from that, but maybe not in a way that's like just be in solitary confinement for the rest of your life, but in a way that's more like, we're going to make sure you're not in society, but we're also going to work on some things so that maybe someday before you're dead.
Norman does, I think, a really good job. There's this scene where he's in the back parlor of the hotel with Marion and they're chatting. And I think he does a good job at giving us a lot of hints that help us to empathize with them. And one of the things that he says is, we all go a little mad sometimes. And that, I think, is a really, really relatable idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's very relatable. And I can tell in that scene, Marion, right? Marion, you can see the look on her face that she can kind of relate to that quotation when he says it. We all go a little mad sometimes. And she's like, yeah, I went a little mad earlier by stealing a bunch of money, which I looked that up. So she ran off with $40,000 in 1960, which is about $336,000 today. Which that's a lot. That's a lot of money.
That's like felony level robbery.
It is. Yeah. And we kind of, as we get more into the film, because she was murdered, we kind of forget about her crime. But she definitely committed a pretty big crime, even if the guy that tried to hit on her at work was being a sleazeball. But you can relate to her too.
In her defense, that guy, he said, never carry around more cash than you can afford to lose. So he had it coming.
Yeah. So he could afford it.
Yeah, she still... right, yeah. She still shouldn't have stole it, but, you know.
Right. And, you know, the point is, like, no one is really innocent. I'm not saying, you know, that, like, stealing money is equal to a bunch of murders. But it's also, like, we're susceptible to doing bad things. We're susceptible to getting close to what Norman Bates did. And, of course, as we know in history with Jeffrey Dahmer, all those people who are born into this world are all susceptible to become similar to him. And you can murder with a conscious mind.
Yeah. Well, there is. So this makes me think a little bit about some stuff that was taught to me when I was in church growing up. In Christianity, there's this idea of grace, and that's that all people are sinners. So we all do bad things. Nobody's perfect, and that all sins are equal. And because of that, we all need to be saved through the grace of God. And it's something that's kind of interesting to think about, I think, because, you know, the idea behind it is not that we should believe that a murder and a theft are just as bad, but just this understanding that we all do bad things. And because of that, we shouldn't be so judgmental towards others who are doing those bad things. I think that's kind of an interesting concept in Christianity that in some ways we can use to be more empathetic towards others.
Right. Next thing that I think is cool to talk about, again with quotations, because the dialogue in this film is pretty impressive. There's some bird stuff going on. And this reminds me of Joe's story about how he was enthralled with some eagles outside his house earlier. I don't know.
Yeah, there's like a family of bald eagles that's like living in my backyard, and I've been watching them.
Should take some videos of that.
I took some pictures and put them on Facebook. Oh, okay. I should give them. You can put them on Twitter if you want.
The birds. It's a very bird day today.
That story has no relation to
just that they're birds.
Psycho, but
and Alfred Hitchcock seemed to like birds.
Yeah, and they are all around in Psycho. Mm-hmm. Norman, his hobby is taxidermy, and he really likes to taxidermy birds.
Gross.
So in the hotel, there are taxidermied birds everywhere. There are owls and hawks and little songbirds, but there are also in the hotel rooms, there's pictures of birds. So they're really everywhere. And Marion Crane, her last name is Crane, which is a bird.
I didn't even catch that.
So what do you think all this bird symbolism is meant to tell us?
Yeah, when I watched it without kind of reading what other people thought about it, I just kind of thought, what is this a metaphor for? I felt that it was more of a metaphor that Norman Bates is the one trapped, stuffed with his mother's thoughts and feelings. He could be a bird that is free, but the stuffing is like weighing him down. He's like almost dead himself, and his mother is the one who's like controlling him. It's kind of like a person who does taxidermy is his mother, and she's stuffing him and keeping him down and doing these awful things, and also keeping him kind of trapped in this hotel.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And so there's the stuffing with the taxidermy, and there's also, I think there's a lot of symbolism around birds and cages, which is kind of the same thing you were saying. Norman might feel like he's this bird that has the ability to go out and fly and do all these things, but instead he is trapped inside of this cage, his controlling mother that doesn't let him do the things that he wants to do. And it's that entrapment that I think can be really detrimental on people's health. We see it in Norman in a really extreme way, where he murders people, but we also see it in Marion, who felt trapped in her life, and when she saw a way out of the cage, which was the $40,000, she took it. And you can hardly feel bad for a trapped bird that takes an opportunity to get out and fly.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I think you could even come up with a bunch of other metaphors for this. I mean, a bunch of other people have. And yeah.
There's a whole like predator and prey type things, because I think birds kind of fall into those two categories. There's the big predator birds like the bald eagles I saw in my backyard. And then there's prey birds that are, the calmer, shyer birds that don't attack and kill things. And I think we see both the predator and the prey within Norman. He's the predator when he's the mom and he's murdering people, and he's the prey when he's himself and he's affected by these whatever these things are in his mind that are hurting him, and whatever effect his mother had on him. We haven't really talked about it, but his mother must have really done a number on him growing up.
Yeah.
Or he must have really been through some stuff.
Yeah.
There's a great television series called Bates Motel. I think all of it or most of it is on Netflix, so I would really recommend it. But it's kind of like a prequel to Psycho. It's Freddie Highmore as a young Norman Bates, and it takes place, the start of the show is him and his mom purchasing the Bates Motel, and then the rest of the storyline is basically what happens over the next number of years leading up towards Psycho. And it really draws from the film for inspiration, and so it's really cool. It really shows that weird dynamic he had with his mother, where she was very loving and caring, but also incredibly overbearing and controlling, and you get to see Norman's transformation. So I would highly recommend watching that show if you have any interest in Psycho.
Yeah, I haven't seen it,
show.
but maybe I'll take your advice. We'll see. I'm pretty deep into other TV shows right now.
Yeah. I'm also recommending that to our listeners. I'm not just, yeah, it's not just for you.
But I'm the center of everyone's attention. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bird stuff, cool. I think, I'll say my real world takeaway, kind of to put a little bit more of a conclusion onto this episode, and mine kind of relates to this bird point. I think Norman Bates helps us empathize a little bit more with people who cannot break free, and that you can relate this to other real world situations. So like if you're in like an abusive relationship or an abusive family, or in a situation where you have lost control over your life, and a lot of people too are kind of like, well, why don't you leave? Why don't you just take control of that and go somewhere? And that's kind of exactly what Marion tried to do. Didn't really work out very well. But then Norman Bates shows us that becoming free takes more effort, more pain for some more than others. Being free is not always possible for some. And yeah, I think that's a way that we can use Norman Bates to empathize with people who can't break free, even if it's from their mind, if it's from someone else. And yeah, I think it's important to remember that, and to also and to
definitely.
kind of figure out, given their situation, how, in what ways could they break free? What are the consequences of that? Because some of those consequences can even result in dire situations, even death.
Yeah. I think my real world takeaway is sort of kind of related in a way. It's not so much about empathy, but I think it's just the importance of having an outlet to express yourself and to have some autonomy in your life. Because when you're trapped in a bad situation for any number of reasons, it really puts a strain on your mental health and just your ability to be happy and healthy. And so maybe when you're thinking about other people in your life, try to remember that they need to be allowed some space to express who they are, or to, in a metaphorical sense, fly like the bird that they are out of their cage.
Fly like an eagle.
Exactly. And if you trap them, or if you don't allow them space to move around, that they may do terrible things like steal $40,000 or murder people, and that's not good.
No,
so
it's
so that's my takeaway.
No murder. That reminds me of a t-shirt that I saw online. It was from Clickhole. And if you know Clickhole, it's just like really random articles. It's kind of like The Onion, but even more ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like a parody of BuzzFeed.
Yeah. And they were like, you should buy this shirt that says, do not kidnap. I don't know why. I just thought it was so funny because it just says, do not kidnap. Like you're an activist, like to tell people to do this obvious like bad thing. And I was like, maybe we should make a t-shirt that says, do not murder. It's bad, FYI, in case you didn't know.
Yeah. Great. So this season we're still sharing literary pieces at the end of the episode when we have them available, but we are also going to try and explore some other creative mediums. We don't know how it's going to go, but we just want to try to find new, fun, interesting ways to try to get to know these characters and understand them in new, different ways. And so, Tiana, I understand that you have prepared an ad lib of sorts.
Yes, this is true. I have prepared my first ad lib. I love ad libs. I think they're hilarious. So I wrote one myself. I hope it's cool. We're going to see. But Joe, you're going to help me fill it in.
Great. I know nothing about this. I have not read it ahead of time. I'm just going to dive in and let's see how it goes.
Yep. So first, of course, as an ad lib works, we don't read it because we want kind of the words that fill in to make it kind of funny. But we need certain types of words, obviously. And so I'm just going to go through and have you think of these words and I'll input them as we go. So the first word that I need is, I just need an adjective.
What adjective describes a noun?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew that.
It's been a while since ninth grade English.
It's a teaching moment for our listeners.
Yes.
How about excited?
Okay.
Wait, that's not an adjective. That's an adverb.
Right. But excited is the adjective.
Okay. Excited.
Okay. Now, because you better think of a lot of adjectives, because I'll have a lot of adjectives through here. So I need another one.
Oh my gosh, I thought that I would be better at this.
It's hard.
Okay, how about slippery?
Okay, next I need a statement that someone says.
Just any kind of statement?
Just any statement.
Have you seen an eagle today?
Next, I need an angry statement that someone says.
I don't enjoy having you around.
Then now I need an adjective.
Tender.
Now I need just something else someone says.
Like a statement or a question?
Statement. Or a question. A question was fine too.
Okay. Could you buy me a drink?
Okay, and an unfortunate verb, or a verb that has like a negative connotation.
An unfortunate verb?
Yeah, like bad, like a negative connotation. So it's not like a happy verb. It's kind of like slanders, like kills, like eat, like rigorously eats. I don't know.
Rigorously
I don't know.
eats?
That's not.
How about
That's an adverb with
devour.
Okay, and then I just need a verb, any verb.
Flew or fly.
Yeah.
I've got birds on my mind.
Obviously. Okay, I need another adjective.
Greasy.
A place to live.
An igloo.
Something that animals can do. Like very random.
Animals can wag their tails.
Okay. A weird feeling.
Queasy.
A creepy feeling.
I don't know what a creepy feeling is.
Or you could just say any creepy
stalker
feeling. Any feeling is good too.
Sorrow.
Okay, an expletive. Like a curse word.
Oh, I don't curse.
Okay, but you could still like...
Oh, wait. Gosh darn.
Okay. Okay. I know the story, so I'm already laughing. An adjective that describes a situation.
Dicey.
Ooh, I like that. Adjective that describes a person.
Supportive.
Now, last one. Adjective to describe a speech.
Romantic.
All right. Are you ready for this?
I think so.
Okay, so it's just called Psycho Ad Lib. There's no title yet. But if you think of a title, you can always DM us on Twitter. I don't know. Let us know. All right. Once upon a time, there was a lady who felt excited and slippery. She had a great idea after she had sex with a random guy. This random guy, the reader or audience does not know. She came to work one day and said, "Hey, have you seen an eagle today?" Sorry. She was also like, "Screw this place, screw this life." After a guy at work tried to harass her, she was even more so like, "I don't enjoy having you around." She was also like, yeah, no. Then her boss was like, "Take this money." And she was very easily like, "Okay." So she gets into her tender car with the money and is like, "Could you..." Sorry. Could you buy me a drink? She drives, but she keeps swaying around like a madwoman. And then finally the cop devours her. She rolls down her window and she's really bad at acting, just chill, and flies away. But then somehow she gets away just fine. She's only like 20 to 30 minutes away from the guy she had sex with and wants to be with forever, I guess. But she decides to take a rest at a greasy hotel. She meets this guy who works at the hotel and stares at people a bit longer than what is comfortable. But maybe he just doesn't understand social cues because he's been living in this igloo for forever, I guess. They talk about birds and how birds wag their tails. She always feels queasy. She likes to take her clothes off slowly in a hotel room. The guy watches her and feels sorrow. Then she takes a wet shower. Obviously, it's wet. But then she's like, this is the best part. But then she's like, "Gosh darn," and starts screaming, "Ah!" She's dead. Someone killed her. It looks like the killer was an old lady from like 1875. For a while, the detective and the guy she had sex with, think something is wrong and dicey. The detective dies. The guy who stares a lot is weirder, more complicated, and supportive than we think. The psychologist has a glorious, insightful, and romantic presentation. The staring guy is himself and a mother. They move on with their lives, and who knows what happens to the staring guy after this ordeal. The end. Ta-da.
I don't know what to say. I guess you don't even need to go watch the film now.
Yeah. Gosh darn. Ah! She's dead. Cool. Well, that's the show.
Yeah. If you have any thoughts about Norman Bates, feel free to send us an email at nextdoorvillain.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. This podcast was written and produced by Joe Anderson and Christiana Hennings. The show is available wherever you listen to podcasts: iTunes, Stitcher, Google, and now Spotify. We'd also really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing.
Ah! Yeah. The end.